You're listening to the Construction Big Breakfast, where we give you a hearty serving of insider tips and business strategies to help fuel your day so you can thrive in the construction industry.
Hello and welcome to the final ever episode of the Construction Big Breakfast. But don't worry folks, that doesn't mean the end of the podcast, that just means a change of direction for us here at Invennt. And to tell us all about that, it is our founding directors, Tim Fitch and Brendan Morahan.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, hi, thanks Ben.
Morning Ben.
So I guess it is traditional, so we should start for the last ever time asking the all-important question, what did you have for breakfast?
Well, you've just seen me eat it. I bought a bacon roll, brown sauce of course, from Jude, the taxi shack, Russell Square.
Brendan?
And it is getting a bit tedious, I know, but I once again had my porridge. Many times I've been having that at home, but recently I've been calling into our friend Erin over at Salt and Pepper, so I had a half hour reading the paper and having my porridge there. So
There you are. I mean, you've
creature of habit.
You've both done better than I haven't had anything yet, so I'll try and sneak something in after
Well,
this. I mean, we are early. We'll use that as an excuse, and the trains are rubbish, so it's a struggle to get in time to have anything else. So this is the 98th episode of the podcast. We've had 81 guests, believe it or not, and amazingly, and I don't know when you two were sat here sort of 98 episodes ago, you thought we'd achieve it, but we've had 1.3 million views over that time. So if you reflect back on where we were for that first episode and where we've got to, has the podcast achieved what you wanted it to when we set off? Are you has it grown bigger than you thought it would? Have you been impressed with the guests and the quality of the conversations we've had? And has anything really stuck out through those 98 episodes for you?
Well, I'll go first. We had no idea, I think is the answer, because when we started it 3 years ago, we probably had the idea a year or two before, we just didn't have the wherewithal to do it. So when we started, would it last 3 years? I don't think I thought that. Will we do nearly 100 episodes in 3 years? Couldn't conceive that. Will we have 1,400 subscribers and 1.4 million views? No. So we didn't, at least I didn't have that sort of ambition or vision for it. So it's been, in that sense, an amazing success. And there's a massive body of work there, which I think we should all be quite proud of, because the content on the whole is good. And we've had some amazing guests, people that we'd known a long time, so they were telling stories about the past and how we met and what they're doing now and how their careers have progressed, which I think is really interesting for people, particularly younger people, to people from all over the world, but of course a whole bunch of people from Canada who have given a really great perspective on a country that speaks a similar language to us, has some aspects of the culture which are the same, but it's different. Certainly they've got a very different set of problems to us. And I think that has been something, I didn't conceive of that either really, that we would get that. So overall, I'm looking back on it, I'm very pleased with what we've managed to do, and it's good stuff. It's good stuff. And if people haven't, if you scroll through the episodes, I'm sure you'll find something that's of interest, no matter where you are in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Brendan, your thoughts?
Different. I knew it was going to be a success right from the outset. I mean, once you've got this man beside you in front of the camera and people are listening to it, it's bound to take off. In fact, I'm surprised it's only 1.4 million. But no, seriously, I think Tim's hit on an important point. We spoke about this for a long time, and we were always of the view we wanted to get excellence in this, and we were talking about getting studios and all that, and then it was just decided in amongst us, well, let's start and improve in use, and I think the next evolution of this needs to take this to another level, which I know we'll talk about later. But from my point of view, I think it has been very satisfying. I think it's a good point that you made there. Did you say 81 guests in 98 episodes? I think the good thing is that the proportion of external guests was important, but we've also had some good internal debates on the podcast as well. So I think it's shown the talent within the team. It's been very pleasing when you're out and about that people do refer to it, so it does get noticed. So from a brand profile point of view, that's good, but from a conversation maker, it's been even better, and that's been very pleasing. One of the objectives we had always set ourselves was to provide tips and insights to people in the construction sector. On reflection, we never did that explicitly, but when I do reflect on what we did, there was an awful lot of really good implicit tips and advice in what was imparted either from ourselves or from our guests. And the conversational nature of the podcast, I think, is something that we should, and our guests should be very, very proud of. And I think it's there, it's in the can, it's for history, it's something that can be referred back to. I know a lot of people that have come on podcasts, it's their first experience of it. They've gone on to do podcasts themselves or have been more encouraged to be involved in podcasts in the future. So I think it's opened up people's minds as well to the power of this if the content is right. So I think it's I'm very, very pleased with it and quite proud of it. So it's now how do we use that as a foundation for the next level.
I think one of the things that shouldn't be overlooked as well, it would have been very easy for it to not happen with COVID. You know, that being able to quickly change to how can we do this virtually, how can we keep it going, how can we get people on, and I think people sort of enjoyed the change of pace and the ability to still sort of share the good stuff that they're doing during those times as well was important for our guests.
Well, not to overplay it, we shouldn't ever forget that there were some people going through some pretty difficult and lonely times there. And I know we had our own internal breakfast every morning to keep in touch, but things like these podcasts, it just does bring a different perspective and different reality into people's lives as well. So, you know, that wasn't the primary objective, but you know, there was some added value associated with that as well.
Just to pick up on a couple of your points, Quentin, there are one or two episodes in there which are labelled as, you know, insights into certain things. I mean, I know there's one on business development, there's another one on networking, which are obviously related. There's lots of stuff on BIM and digitisation. So I don't think we actually produced something that was 100%, you know, like a classroom lecture, but a lot of those conversations were directed towards, depending on who the guest was, drawing out their secret sauce or their magic dust, whatever you want to call it, or their insight into these things. And it's there. So scroll through it, there's 98 to look at. The earlier ones, we changed the way we labelled them. The earlier ones are about the content. They're labelled around the content. The more recent ones are focused on the guest's name. But nevertheless, there is quite a lot, there's a lot there. And they're roughly 30 minutes each, so there's 50 hours of content. You could get a master's degree if you study that. Maybe we should offer a qualification in the construction big breakfast.
No, very true.
Or mastermind. Yeah, it could be a topic on mastermind.
Okay. What, 60 questions? How many questions can you answer on the content of the Big Breakfast? Well, there you go. I've seen stranger things on Mastermind, if I'm honest.
I mean, just another point on that is, and it's partly linked with our strategic change and the new podcast that you'll be referred to later. But all of our discussions might have started off on a specific. It might be product related or construction related. But very quickly it turned off into the personal story and the business story. And of course the personal story and the business story transcend all sectors. And I think that's what was particularly interesting to me, is how there are a lot of similarities. And you can focus on the differences, but it's about the similarities and how do you get that excellence in what is similar, and how can you transfer them from business to business and from sector to sector. And that's what I think is the excitement for the future for us.
No, certainly, and I ended up referring to other podcasts within podcasts because of the similarities in the conversations. So the podcast that you guys have been involved with, or that you've sort of watched and listened to over the years. Does anything, a particular episode stand out to you, or a particular sort of nugget of knowledge that you picked up along the way that stands out as something that sort of will stay with you, share more than others maybe?
Well, I've been looking at them. It's hard to pick one on its own, so I'll have to choose a few. There's one which is sort of Riccardo Cosentino, who's he's Canadian now, although he started off Italian. And someone I knew, he worked for me 25 years ago as a site engineer in the railways. And his story about how he's ended up being the EVP of SNC Leveland, looking after their billions and billions of dollars worth of PPP projects was an amazing story, and it was great to touch base again with someone who I've sort of kept in touch with, but probably lost track of in the last 10 years. And then, I met him in Toronto, and we had him on the podcast because he's part-time, he's in the UK now. So that was one that stood out for me. We had Steve Fox, who, at the time he was the outgoing CEO of BAM. He'd obviously, BAM Nuttall, he'd got some Steve Fox insights into the industry, which at least he's got robust views. You may not agree with them, but that one, of course, was done remote. It was done during lockdown. So they're two for me, which I can remember very clearly.
I think if I think about it, it's probably the extremes that probably most memorable for me. I can remember, and we laugh about it internally, but we had an internal about concrete, which one could laugh, but it was very technical and very specific. But then on the other end of the spectrum, we had, as you know, as a business, we support charities. So we've supported a Paralympic athlete, we support the Salon charity. So we've had Casey George Dunleavy in here with her gold medals. We've had Father Pat Devine in here. And when you speak about Casey, what she's achieved from a personal point of view through all adversity, and compare that with business challenges, when you look at the conflict resolution that Father Pat's had to deal with from a humanitarian point of view, and compare that with the collaboration challenges we have in business. That sort of juxtaposition I thought was really interesting. It showed the breadth of the relationships that we have, what we do, and the people that we know, and the subject matter that we cover, and how you can always draw the similarity, but also then what's the difference that can make the difference to your future. So I think it's really those extremes that I remember more than some of the specifics. But without exception, I generally can't think of an exception where they weren't good, comfortable conversations. It wasn't about point scoring, it was almost forgetting about other people listening, or there was a camera over there. It was really getting into interesting conversations and debates, and long may that continue.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've done a podcast where the guest has sat there going, "Oh, what are we going to talk about for half an hour?" and then been surprised when the half an hour is gone. I mean, it's always been very easy to have a conversation with all our guests and the internal ones as well. We're all very proud of what we do here, and all our guests are proud of what they've been doing, and have really, I think, appreciated the opportunity to share those insights and share the good things that they've been doing. So, like we said, sort of at the start, this is the last big breakfast, and that's because of a sort of change of emphasis that we're going through as an organisation here at Invennt, and want to focus more broadly on innovation as an organisation and as a topic. So the Construction Big Breakfast will sort of stop, and our new podcast, and do keep an eye out for the first new episode in a month or so probably, will be Innovation Deciphered. So Tim, Brendan, do you want to share your thoughts on why the sort of change in emphasis?
Well, there's a few reasons. So as we've talked about, we've done 98 episodes, we've been going 3 years, so season 4 is going to be Innovation Deciphered, And we start filming on Monday. We've got a very, very exciting guest, and as you might guess, it's all about innovation, all things innovation. And the reason for that is that, as Brendan mentioned a little while ago, I think our business has matured, and we've dealt with hundreds of businesses now, not just in construction, but obviously the vast majority. And all of those guests who, not all of them are directly in construction, they're touching it, but they're doing other things as well. We've learned that the innovations that we look for in construction companies, the process by which we look at them, that works in other sectors, and we've tried it in the fashion sector. And if you want to see, we've got another podcast series, Luxury Insights, which does this, but for the fashion sector. And it became clear to us that our sort of insights and knowledge about how businesses work and how innovation works within businesses would have broader appeal than just construction. And so construction's our core, and it probably always will be. We're going to move our business more towards innovation management and broaden the appeal to the marketing to all sectors. For those reasons, really, we think there's something there for us to offer. I think innovation means finding an idea there and applying it there. We've always brought ideas into construction. Well, I'm sure construction can take ideas to other sectors, and of course, all the sectors can learn from each other. So that's the strategic direction we're taking the business, and hence the podcast.
Brendan, anything to add?
Well, I think it's the very tenet of how this business was founded, and I know the belief of everyone in the business is that with limited resource, you've always got to be looking at competition. And if you are going to compete with that limited resource, you've got to come up with something different. And therefore, everything that is different starts off with thinking about doing things in a different way, which leads to innovation. And therefore, we just have always seen this as a strategic advantage anyway. We've done a lot internally to ensure that we are better able to exploit innovation internally. We see too many examples externally where there are great ideas that aren't being properly exploited, either through lack of a system or lack of a culture. And therefore we see this as being a big opportunity for the businesses that we know and the businesses that we are looking forward to getting to know very soon, to try and help that become more systemic in their business, so that they grow and we grow together. And it's just exciting because you're talking about new stuff rather than old, tried, tested and doom and gloom and why is it always this way? Well, that's not what we want to spend our time on. We want to think about the excitement of the future and how we make things better.
It is. I mean, you're right. Innovation is exciting. It's interesting, but I also think sort of quite misunderstood in how to approach it, apply it, and make best use of good ideas, good hunches, thoughts, and sort of the overcoming of problems that we so often have to undertake on a day-to-day. It's actually, well, how do you turn that into something valuable long term, which I think is something that isn't well understood in terms of, like you say, a system and a process. And that's hopefully what we can help decipher. We can help people understand how to do some of this through, as we've been doing over the last 98 episodes, hearing good stories, sharing insights, and with this real focus on innovation.
Yeah, so we're hoping that this podcast will be the Rosetta Stone for innovation. Just thought that one out. That's a good innovation.
As long as it's indigenous,
So, but I think that is we want to be. Most businesses have great people in them who have good ideas, and the whole point of being able to. But a good idea is not worth anything unless you do something with it. You've got to know someone's had a good idea, and then you've got to go through a process to say, well, drop the ones which are look good on paper, but or at least
Mhm.
good up here, and once you look at it, perhaps aren't so good. And then work out how to exploit it. But and of course that's partly process, it's partly culture, because we've come, I don't know, everyone's come across plenty of people, the frustrated geniuses who have all these great ideas and no one ever listens to them. At least they think no one ever listens to them. And nothing ever happens. And of course, not every good idea can be turned into money. If none of them are, then it's a big problem. So that's what we're hoping to get going.
And I think the point of all of this isn't just woolliness and nice academic thinking. This is about saying, well, look, there's a commercial realism to this. You've got to make sure there is a perceived return on this. But also, if the return is so good and you can't afford to do it yourself, how do you attract finance to do it? And as well as that, how do you improve your own balance sheet so you can do more of it in the future? So it brings that virtuous circle around. But this is about good business sense, and how do you bring all aspects to bear on that, rather than just have a good idea, a good process, but you don't have the wherewithal to exploit it.
Yeah, and one of the the failures of an innovation process that most organisations have is they jump straight to the big idea rather than actually, well, how can I make my idea small enough that I can test it for £100 sort of thing. What paths do I have here? How can I make that big idea, a small idea, enough to test the problem in the first place to prove that it's a good idea?
But also, it's also having that strong network of what is the market likely to want and need, but also what are the financiers interested in backing or not, because everything runs in cycles and fashion, so it's just being attuned to the time of when is right.
And in tune to the timing of when is it right to ask those questions.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, again, it's about, everything's about timing in some ways. It's about, you've got to make sure you've got a good idea before you ask those questions, because if you ask those questions too early, you might not have not found out that it is a good idea. But these are the type of things that we will explore in far more detail.
Yeah.
And I'm interested, very excited. I mean, we've been through a bit of an innovation journey ourselves over the last 6-8 months, where we've sort of researched best practice, tried to understand what good looks like, not just in construction but across the board. We've sort of implemented a much better system and process internally that I think we're starting to see the fruits of our labour, as it were, with some things that we're turning into tangible outputs. So hopefully our learning and other learnings can be everyone's learnings.
And some good news to announce shortly, please God.
Hopefully, but yeah, I mean, unofficially tomorrow. We'll see.
Watch this space.
Watch this space. Hopefully, London Build Expo, if you're going to be there at the Olympia on the 17th of November, we might be sort of shaking hands about something, but we'll see. We might have to edit this bit out, Ashland. We'll see how that goes.
Was that a sufficient teaser?
I think we're sort of fast running out of time. So what are your hopes for season 4, as you call it, Tim?
Well, I know because Ashton's been working very hard on the format, including the production quality is going to be higher. We've got some great guests lined up. First one's an absolute corker. Again, that's another teaser. So you'll have to wait for it to be published in a few weeks' time. But I just think we're going to, with what we've learned at the Construction Big Breakfast, we're going to take it to the next level. We've got some great guests. It's got a great theme now, Innovation Deciphered. And I'm sure we'll get even more views and we'll get lots and lots of subscribers, because it's, there's going to be some great content.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, we said that we've got to learn how to do this, and we'll continue to get a lot out of doing this. But that's only half the story. What really matters is if the people who follow us are getting something out of this. So what do I really look forward to? I'm looking for, in the future, our guests and our listeners having this sort of a conversation about the value of the podcast, rather than just us talking about it, so that they can refer to times when they received something that was a real catalyst for them to do something different. It was a point in time that they changed the way they operated as a result of conversations they've heard from us, because then we've really achieved something.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, on that, if you do want to share your own personal sort of innovation story, innovation journey, please do reach out, let us know. It'd be great to have you on as a guest for our podcast. We'll wrap up by thanking our 81 guests for their views, opinions and insights through the Construction Big Breakfast run. We all look forward to seeing what Innovation Deciphered look like, and please do remember to like and subscribe so that you do not miss out on what will be a cracking podcast series all about innovation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, see you season 4.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Construction Big Breakfast. Make sure to visit our website, www.inventt.com, where you can subscribe to the Construction Big Breakfast on all platforms so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a positive rating. Or if you'd simply share it with a friend, that would help us out too. Be sure to tune in for our next episode.